So I haven't finished listening to last week's episode, but I did start and I do have some commentary.
Awesome. Give us the little sister last born perspective.
Well, the first part, I will say, I found it really interesting, and I don't know why I was today years old when I figured out what you said to be so true about when you're the youngest or younger, any siblings above you, and I guess I can't speak for all youngest, but siblings above you do make a difference in terms of the decisions you make. So I was thinking when you said that, like Warren's like, well, no, I never thought about what you and Karen thought about any decisions he ever made. And I think every single decision I made in my childhood, I factored you guys in. And
Hmm.
sometimes to a huge degree. I wouldn't say more than mom and dad ever, but certainly to a huge degree. Like I kept playing sports when I should have just like stopped and gone and done musical theater or something that would have been much better suited for my
Yeah.
actual gifts.
Well, you were athlete of the year your senior year, so you can't diminish your abilities that much.
Okay, but let's be honest. That was because I basically got the Spirit Award. I mean, I was
Well, you were a captain. You were a very important player on each of your teams. You weren't necessarily the best player on each of your teams, but you were
I was
super
never
important
I was never the
and
best
a
player.
strong leader and a great hustler. And
I was a hustler
yeah, and I didn't write
and
in
an
that vote for
encourager.
you. That was the staff at Seven Hills choosing you. So
I
that
don't think
wasn't.
you could have written in the vote. You
That's what
were
I'm saying. So you have as many athlete of the year and high school awards as I did. So
okay.
we each got one.
Welcome to Love and Life. I'm Dr. Karin Anderson Abril here with my co-host,
Pastor Elliott Anderson.
and Love and Life is your place to hear conversations grounded in psych research, psychotherapy,
And biblical truth.
to help us thrive in love and life.
Point being, I probably should have abandoned sports much earlier and yeah, gone into musical theater or something, although mom and dad probably didn't want me hanging out with Patty Flanagan's crowd too much.
Yeah, that was an
She was a
interesting crew.
she was a little scary to them. I think she was very much that like hippie vibe, and they were the generation before that. I think they liked her and recognized she was really great at the theater stuff. So yeah, it's a true thing that you end up having more of that parental influence, even if it's a brother like you who I fought with for 3/4 of our childhood, and we finally ironed things out in high school and became buddies. But it still mattered what you guys thought. Like, if I'd quit any of those sports, and you guys had something to say about it, and even if I anticipated or imagined you might have something to say about it, it impacted my decision making for sure. So I found that very interesting.
An angle about that I would have gone into last week if you were with us, I'll do now, even though Warren can't kind of pontificate on it with us, is how each of us had a different kind of brother role for you. Right.
Oh,
So
yeah.
Warren didn't do day-to-day silliness and games. And I played with your friends, you played with my friends. We were doing all kinds of stuff in the neighborhood together, Clifton Hills Meadows together. That was our swim club thing. I was training you as an athlete often. I would force you to go down and do soccer and go down and do basketball. And so we did a lot of that. But Warren was more, since he was like 7 years older than you, 6.5 years older
6.
or whatever, he was more of a protector, provider, older brother for you, I think, than I was. I think I was more of a playmate, agitate,
Yeah.
fighter kind of connection, but that the lens was still important. That's why I threw the whole Warren did English, I did psych, you did both, right? Because it's a really interesting
Mhm.
systemic to kind
Mhm.
of show that. And then musically, though you stopped your piano career too early, you did all your singing and all your movements towards the musical side of our family, but kept the sports side longer than Warren did. Even though Warren finished high school basketball, he kind of dropped all the other sports and you've played all three, I believe, all the way through, did you not?
Mhm. Mhm. I did.
Yeah. So that's an interesting dynamic as well. But I think that difference in the role, so therefore your role with us was also different. I don't remember you and Warren fighting ever,
We did a little bit, but
other than he was
nothing.
yelling at me,
Yeah.
probably.
Well, he was yelling at you to knock it off. He was definitely more protective. He would take care of me. We would fight, like, I would just be annoying to him. Like I mean, imagine he's 16, I'm 10, and I think, "Oh, I wanna be funny with him," and he's not finding it
Yeah.
funny. Plus, he was
I wonder
16
how
going
many
on
times though he
36.
was really annoyed with you on your own, or it was the two of us ganging up, being silly, poking at him, doing our accents and
Yeah.
making up
Oh, we
languages and yeah.
yeah, we definitely tag teamed to annoy him.
Yeah. But
But it
that
was also to
lens is
engage
really
him. It's
important.
to engage him. I mean, I
Yeah.
wanted his attention. If I had to be annoying to get it, I would do it.
Yeah, and I think that's that status of the firstborn, whether it's a boy or a girl. As I said, I didn't always try to prove myself against Warren or conquer him or release myself from even trying to be like him, but rather used him as that measuring barometer.
Mm, mhm.
And I wonder if you had a similar thing all the way up to him, or did you use me more as a measuring barometer?
Both, but different domains. Like,
Hmm.
if Warren told me I crushed it with a solo, it would mean more than you, no offense,
Of
because
course.
he's the
Yeah.
musician and the vocalist. But if Warren told me I did great in basketball, it would mean less than if you did because you were the athlete.
Just like Warren said, hey, I didn't think about you and Karen at all when I was making decisions. I thought way more about him than I did you in decisions.
Right.
I think you were in there a little bit because I did feel some protective role still in the masculine style. And dad would send me up to get you home from the neighbors when you needed to come home. This was the 70s, and Cincinnati is a pretty safe place, but we also lived less than a mile from a prison, a mile from
Yeah.
48,000 college students. So he would run me up. It was very close. So I felt a little piece of that, but I don't remember a lot of decisions reflecting down, but I definitely remember reflecting up
Sure.
and
Sense.
purposely, I think, seeing that Warren was a good athlete, but I could separate myself in that angle and put more attention there or more motivation there. And as you and I have talked before, and it's in my Simon Says book, soccer might have been my best sport, but because dad didn't like soccer, I stopped playing it. And I probably could have gone farther even with soccer than I did everything else. It fits my size, my skill, my
Mhm,
speed.
mhm.
I remember when you were dating Kelly, who was an all American soccer player. Karen was dating when we were at Judson. And in the summer, he worked for me because everyone Karen's involved with works me or connects with me somehow. Anyway, Kelly, we played soccer one day and Kelly and Rebel were just freaked out. They're like, holy crap, you're actually pretty decent. Like, you're not just a basketball player out there who's quick. You actually know what you're doing with soccer. And I told them I loved the sport. It was very fun, all that kind of stuff. So those scenarios make a difference. And so looking down, I wanted you to be the best athlete you could in all those things, but I don't remember feeling it impacted me if you had a bad game or and I think it would be different, right? If you had a bad game, you were probably worried what
Mhm.
I thought.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I didn't worry what you thought if I had a bad game.
No.
I worried what dad thought. Warren was always pretty good about, even though he wouldn't let me beat him and he was kind of cruel at times that drove my intensity. He was pretty good about championing me when I was playing well. And when I was a freshman and started on the varsity with him in high school, he could have made that pretty difficult for me if he wanted with his senior friends. But instead, he was pretty good about it. He wasn't effusively praising me all the time, but he would give me enough encouragement and connection. And I remember him telling one of the guys, Ed Carson, who was a fun guy, but back in those days when hazing was so serious and he would do a lot of it, I remember Warren backing him off, saying, "Hey, that's enough, right? Yeah, Elliott's obviously not enjoying this. We
Yeah.
need him tomorrow night. Leave him alone. Just,
Yeah.
you know, back it off." And so he did a little bit of that, but that context again is interesting. And when I did go to Judson to continue my athletic career, I did miss watching your games. I missed seeing you develop and connecting, but I don't remember calling you and asking you how your games went or anything.
No. Mm-mm.
Yeah. But I called dad after every college game I played, right? I couldn't always catch him, but I'd give him a quick update and a quick, hey, I was 3 for 4. We won the first game or whatever, if it was baseball or in basketball, told him what happened. And again, this is back in the days when long distance was expensive. So they weren't long
Exactly.
calls.
I was just
They
gonna
weren't
say
long
that.
phone calls. They were just quick reports. But
But it
that's
took
interesting, right?
effort too. You had to go down
Yeah,
to the phone at the end of the hall.
that's right.
We didn't even have phones in our dorm rooms, so you would have had
No.
to gone and then have a calling card of some sort that we would have had. So it wasn't like now these kids can be so tethered to their parents because they've got, oh, quick text, a quick selfie photo, here's what's going on, or it was an effort to stay that connected, and it was obviously was meaningful for you to share with him because you knew he'd be proud of you and he was very, very proud of your athleticism
Yeah,
for
and the
sure.
intensity. He liked the way I
Yeah.
played hard.
Mhm.
Yeah, and a little bit edgy.
Also, like, I would have never been critical of you. I was such and still am. I was such a fan and so proud of you. Like, my brother's great. Like, he's the best on the team. Like, so if you'd had a bad game, I'd have been like, well, he didn't get his spaghetti at Steak and
His
Shake
pregame
before
meal. Yeah.
something happened. He didn't carbo load. I would have made an excuse. Like, I was so
Yeah.
proud of you, like, so, and still am, like I said. But
What about as adult? Obviously, if it's something with our show or it's something about families, of course, now I keep you in a appropriate lens as adults about dynamics, but I don't often think, I wonder if Karen will approve of this. I don't think of it in like
yeah,
authoritative or accountable way. I still do that with Warren though. If I have to write something pretty important
yeah.
to the administration or, a church board or something, I'll still run stuff by him. Even though I'm a good writer myself now, and most time my grammar's strong, and it's not always, but when I did my like stuff for my professor reviews and stuff, I'd still run stuff by him. You're a
So
great
he's
writer.
your,
I could have ran by you, but I didn't, right?
he's
I don't
better
think of
though.
it that way.
First of all, he's still better. So that's the thing. I think it's domain specific. I think you run it by him. I did. My entire book I had him read. I mean, you do. You have him edit your books too. So I think it's just no. He is incredible. Like, I mean, people should understand. Tim can vouch for this. Like, a text message from Warren is going to sound like some prose from some like sonnet, or it sounds literary in a
Yeah.
way that a text message
Sometimes I just
usually does.
laugh.
Like, he's so you just and it's not like he's sitting there for 45 minutes. It's just he's so good that it's beautiful. I love it. I'm like, gosh, I wish I could do that. So I think it's domain specific, don't you? Like, that makes perfect sense to me
Yeah, I think
that you would do that.
domain, proximity probably has something to do with it. We both work at the same school. We live in the same
Yeah.
city.
Even if you did that more because let's say he wasn't that much better a writer than us. He was just we were all kind of the same level, but he's still your big brother. I would get that. Like, I don't
Hmm.
think you fully well, you have to understand a little bit because you're the little brother from Warren, obviously. But when you're the youngest child, at least the way that my life and career as a youngest child has been, I always, I go submissive always to this day. Like, for you to be like, well, I care more what Warren thinks about my writing than Karen. That doesn't even phase me. I'm like, yeah, of course.
Sure. Yeah, I know.
It's
Wasn't
not
hurting your
even like
feelings or anything. Yeah.
it doesn't. Mm-mm.
And do you think that matters? Well, I think it matters. And we only talked about it briefly last week about me marrying an oldest and Warren marrying a middle. We switched the roles, and then
Yeah.
you went to an oldest. And you and I have
No, he's
talked about this
not.
before. I mean,
He's
not an
not.
old. I
He's
mean,
middle.
middle. So you based it. Was it a natural connection because he was middle, and you and I had the natural connection? Was it the age gap made it oldest middle, meaning older than
No,
you, but
no.
middle, right?
Okay,
Where
so
do you
this
think
is
that context came from?
okay, I think this is instructive so I've done the research on this, and the most stable marriages are oldest sons with youngest daughters. So, and I think I've talked about this maybe, but there are, and again, I don't know, stable or secure or comfortable or blah, blah, blah. And of course, many configurations can work, but birth order does play into friendship also. Look at all my boyfriends, every single one before Dan, oldest or only child. Every single one. So that dynamic, oldest or only and care works great. What happened in Dan's family is his oldest sister, so he's three of four. Sister, older brother, Dan, younger brother. Sister was wild child. So very high achieving like an oldest typically is, but more rebellious, not the compliant typical that we see with a typical firstborn. So she kind of abdicated in that sense. Older brother, very high achieving again, lawyer, very bright, very, 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 very bright, but also doesn't have that kind of structure and organization that we typically see with. So he's kind of like, whatever. And the way Dan is not. So Dan picked up, I think, a couple stray old, because he's got so many oldest child vibes. That's why it works. He's just not the typical middle child at all.
Yeah, but the middle factor relationally is significant for him in his strengths as a businessman, as a husband, as a friend. So he has a very different vibe than a traditional oldest CEO personality, even though he is a CEO,
There's more
owner.
warmth there than some CEO
Exactly. It's
oldest
more
can have.
relational
Not
based to me. Hmm.
No dissing to Tim, because Tim's a very warm oldest child. But there are some that get that very executive kind of a little bit
It's
of
just a little more reserved
little
and
sterile.
contained.
Yeah, a little more sterile, like no, Dan has all the traits of all the best traits of all the birth order. He's the best of all.
So he's got the nice little piece of each, which is really helpful.
He's
And they
amazing.
can be adaptable. The research does say we can adapt. And when I do this with my interpersonal class and we have to look at all the different elements of the birth order, I give like 9 traits for firstborn, 9 for middle, 9 for youngest. But they circle which ones fit and they create their
Mhm,
own systemic.
mhm,
And I'm trying to get them to open up the realities of the systemic of it, but also the relational part of it. And then what do you want to work on? Do you want to be more outgoing? Do you want to be more? And we know
yeah,
now so much more than we did when you and I are growing up. The neuroplasticity can allow you to really, in not every circumstance, but many, kind of choose. I'm going to be happier. I'm going to be more chill. I'm
mhm,
going to be
mhm,
more organized. I'm going to be more disciplined. Whatever, you can really kind of set that and go. But this natural lens of the world based on what our birth order is like, and then who the siblings are with us,
right,
right? And we talked about that last week too. That your example of Dan, that's depending on what the child above you does, makes a big difference where you go. It'd have been interesting if I'd have done a mini me of Warren, if you'd have rebelled, if you would have had any, if you would have felt like, oh, I don't have a space here, but you were only girl, that gave you enough uniqueness. But it'd been curious if I would have been compliant and dutiful also if you would have not necessarily, I can't see you going hog wild like I did, but I could see you a little bit, maybe more sneaky than rebellious in mom's face. I know you gave mom sass and attitude, but
mhm,
I don't think you gave, I don't think you went off on dad like I did occasionally. And of course, I
no
earned the
way.
consequences for it. But so I don't know if I guess as I'm talking out loud, I don't know if you would have fully rebelled if I hadn't.
Well, so to your point, and there's a term for this, and it's bothering me that I can't remember it. You spoke to how you carved out part of your identity was partly going, okay, I'm not going to be able to dominate the siblings in the music because Warren's clearly genetically endowed to be dad junior with the musical ability. So I got to find my spot, my space. So the athleticism. And there's a term for that where siblings intentionally go in a different direction to get their identity, which then is interesting to your point. If that older sibling weren't there, would they have gone in that direction? Maybe not. Maybe somewhat, depending on their genetic hardwiring, but then maybe not based on the fact that some of that, again, it's the nature nurture, the interaction of that older sibling's presence. And wait a minute, I can't go in that direction. I'm not going to be able to be the star there. Let me go over here to be the star. So, yeah, but I think it's interesting. I mean, I'm trying to make this not just about you and me and our our memory lane, but just trying to see how this can apply to listeners' lives. And I do think it's interesting to find those patterns. It is interesting to think that dating patterns and what works, what are strong partnerships, what aren't, and then also friendship patterns. And so I mentioned I used to date always firstborns or onlys. Well, also my best friends,
Hmm.
every single one, only child. So Heather Skillings in grade school, Sarah DePalma in middle school, Kate Kuhn in high school, and then Miriam, also not an only, she's youngest, but by like 7, 8 years. So that kind
Yeah.
of makes her like an only.
And Claire,
So
a youngest, but in the adoption realm, a little bit a unique stance there also, right? Because
yeah,
it's a little bit different. Andrew's her brother, of course, but not biologically, and so there is a little difference there. There's an element of onlyness in that.
I don't know. I don't
I do.
know.
It's my opinion. I'm keeping
Well, I'm going with it. I mean,
it. Yeah.
that's her brother.
So this stuff matters, Karen. Where to get it applicable for folks listening, I think it really matters in our family systemics with all of our cousins and relatives to think how those dynamics take place and how people respond to different things. And right, we all know when things gather together as families, we know who needs order and who needs structure and who doesn't. Right,
Mhm.
we know what mom needs in these big events based on her personality and temperament. And since she's the matriarch, we yield in that direction a majority of the time, which we should. So it's not a big deal to me, even though I like more creative freedoms. Right. And so when we're at work, I think we can quickly ascertain and assess that also, right? And kind of recognize who our coworkers are, what their systemics are, what they need, what keeps them strong, what keeps them best. You don't cater your whole career to it, but being aware of it and kind of using that information to be a better friend, better partner, better, I think it's super valuable.
You think about it, actually, the kid's therapist was giving them the Myers Briggs the other day. And it was funny because I know I'm an ENFP and Dan took it. He got hopped online and found one, and he is an ESFJ. So we are the same on 2 and the opposite on 2. And when we read the list of, like, what makes the distinction between a P and a J and an S and an N, we started
I think you're going to
cracking
need to
up.
explain to people all what
I
they mean.
Okay, so E is extrovert or introvert. You can be an E or an I. S is sensing, N is intuitive, F is feeling. Thank you, Tim.
Extroverts, introverts, sensors, intuitives,
Okay, sensing
thinkers,
and
feelers,
Thinkers,
thinkers,
OST.
yeah,
Okay.
and then judgers, perceivers.
judges, perceivers.
And I don't fully understand it. I just know when I took it, I'm the most rare.
Nice.
Way to
Okay.
go. Well,
So
yeah, like we were saying, you're this warm, empathic firstborn.
I don't know what that
And
means, but
Who still likes his structure and order and thinking things in process, which is good.
I'm not trying to say Warren's not empathic because he is. He is actually very tender and very, very,
But he's an I.
yeah.
Yeah, and my wife's an I. Angie's actually the opposite 4 of me. I'm the exact same as you.
You're ENFP?
Mhm.
That totally does.
And
That
she's
tracks.
the
That totally tracks.
opposite 4. And I
All
remember
4.
when I took it in seminary and I was talking to my professor who kind of mentored me and he was the one who kind of steered me towards family therapy crisis work. He's like, "You got a lot of energy. You should probably."
Yeah.
And I remember when I showed him, he goes, "Oh, wow." He's kind of like, "How's marriage going?" I'm like, "Well, it's tough.
Mhm.
We're both such strong, passionate leaders. We're really struggling to know how to decipher and negotiate who leads what and why and how." And he goes, "Yeah, this is interesting and significant." He goes, "It'll make you powerfully, comprehensively a great team."
Power
He
couple.
go, yeah, he goes, "You guys probably do," and this fits Robert Sternberg's different types of marriages, and we're a garden marriage. And that's do well in projects together, do well working together, do well in
Mhm.
teammates. And then when it comes to strange nuances about something, we can get in a scrap in a millisecond. But those things fit. And it helped me when he was telling me about those differences and how those related well together.
Well, on that point, I remember giving it to mom and dad during grad school for some reason. I must have been doing, like, assessments or something, and they were real similar. I don't know if it was this, but it was for scales again, and so I can't remember if it was Myers-Briggs. I think it was. But they were very similar on 2 and then polar opposites on 2.
So like
And
yin
I
and yang
remember.
a little bit.
Right, and then I kind of remember thinking, would they have been, to your point earlier about how we respond to the sibling above us in a marriage, if they kinda leaned in that direction and then were able to go even farther, because if dad was strong in this, then mom could be like, "I'll just let him deal with that." And so that whatever strength or whatever characteristic she kinda let him take the lead on that. And so you think about after 50 years of marriage,
Mm-hmm.
how has your personality been shaped by your spouse, and in ways that you maybe were kinda had a little bit of this, but once your spouse took it over, you kind of just let them take the wheel on that.
Yeah. And for mom and dad, I'll use them as example in the context of what I wanted to share next about Myers-Briggs or the disc theory or any of these other ones that help give you kind of an identifier to look at.
Yeah,
I think dad, because I asked him and he told me the most significant trauma he grew up in was poverty. He felt the poverty was more significant to him than the
yeah.
abuse. Mom's was the father wound, her dad dying at age 2. And so you look at dad always has had a natural oldest son kind of fatherly spirit. And all of our friends saw him as another father. And he'd be taking everybody and driving places, everybody picking people up, and always had a heart for any of my or your friends who didn't have as much money. And, he'd be overly generous in a good way,
Mhm.
not a bad way, but not in a
Right.
manipulative way. But so I think in that dynamic of their mom and dad's personalities, mom's father wound and need for that strong, masculine, decisive leader fit perfect for what dad needed also.
Mhm.
Dad wasn't looking for a debater with him about family rules or
No.
systemic, right? He wanted to be in charge of that, and that
Yeah.
fit what mom needed. And yet dad was able to say, gosh, she's super organized, she's super structured. I can let her home management everything, and allowed him the freedoms to be his creative, random,
Mhm.
spontaneous self within his structure his
Right.
research is. So it was a really nice match. Some of that I thought when I analyzed it looking back, I think some of the match came through childhood loss and trauma that ended up meshing well.
Mhm.
And mom and dad did a great job acknowledging what had happened, although dad at times I didn't know it till later, but acknowledging what had happened, but said, I'm not going to live out of that identity. I'm not going to live out of that wound. I'm going to move forward. But I think those matches matter. They help. And sometimes
Yes.
those wounds can work against each other if we're not
Right.
careful. Sometimes, right, we talk at like toxic relationship or trauma bonds where my wound and your wound can play off each other in a way that's not helpful. So
Mhm.
it is beneficial when you're doing a system analysis of marriage or dating or premarital work
Mhm.
that I'll often put all that together in a context to kind of help the couple understand. Often, Karen, it's not rare for couples to come in and go, we always fight about this. We don't know why. We can't figure out why this particular issue always gets us. Or we're great with money. We're great with sex. We're great with this. But kids' discipline is a mess. We just get so frustrated, right? And so often I help them kind of reverse engineer and ask about birth order, ask about their systemic, who was in charge of their discipline growing up. Sometimes my mom was totally, oh, my dad was totally. So they're both in a systemic where their masculine or feminine side was in charge, and now together they can't find the middle. So
Mhm.
that's again where some of this analysis and stuff that you and I do all the time, and Warren jokingly said occasionally is exhausting in his analysis of that, can really matter in a counseling setting or a clinical setting to help couples find those weird underlying pains sometimes that we can't figure out why they're there.
I mean, in a way you could say people's pathologies just mesh well or they mesh poorly because we are
That
all
is true.
carrying some of like we're all just a product of like our idiosyncrasies and again pathologies, I hate pathologizing everything, but I've just said it before just to be kind of tongue in cheek or kind of cheeky, I guess, is true love is when your pathologies blend well and you just
That would be a Snoopy line if it was. Remember, he always said the true love is, and Charles Schultz
right.
said that'd have been a
Mhm. Yeah,
true.
I mean,
And Charles Schultz was very psychological. He would have liked that. True love is when your pathologies
yeah,
mesh.
just mesh well and it works for you. And yeah, dad's randomness jazz musician chaos was something that mom could anchor him. And so I remember, and I've talked about this in the program, but it bears repeating that when I was at Wheaton and I had some other friends who were musicians and we talked about getting a band together and we never did, but we talked about it. So we talked about music a lot and when I was sharing that dad was a jazz musician and piano player and professor and all this, they're like, "Oh my gosh, your house must have been so chaotic growing up."
Yeah.
Fair
Nope.
assessment. And I
Fair,
was
but
like
Mama didn't let
but
it.
it struck me, I was like, the exact opposite.
Yeah, it was
We
very
had
ordered.
such a like, we did
Yeah.
not miss Sunday school. We did not
Mm-mm.
miss church. I mean, that we and my friends, I remember, like, I get grounded for a week. They're like, "Oh, your mom will forget about it in a couple days." I'm like, "No,
No,
no, no,
she
no, no,
won't.
no, no, no. Grounded
No.
for a week is a week. It's a week, and
Yeah.
it's not."
To the exact
So
minute.
to the
Yeah.
minute. So, again, did dad become even more freeform at times because he
I
could,
think so.
because mom's structure allowed him the space? Whereas if we'd had a mom who wasn't as structured, dad might have had to, because he had the capability, obviously. You don't get a doctorate, you don't become a successful professor, you don't start a publishing company. Like, he could be structured and organized when necessary, but he also had that creative side that was just flowing all the time.
When the pathologies don't align and when our wounds don't align, whether it's in a love relationship, whether it's in the family systemic still, what I see happen with middles and babies is holding on to the hope and holding on to the fantasy, the healing fantasy, and sometimes even dancing in ways we don't need to dance about anymore as an adult, trying to make the relationships work. Right.
And
And we can
oldest
get
don't?
stuck. I don't think as much to me. I think oldest will be a little more cut and dry. And Warren spoke of this, that he doesn't reflect too much once he makes a call or a decision. He kind of doesn't, he kind of moves on, and doesn't mean it, he could have made the wrong call, but it doesn't mean he's going to like sit in that and ponder it too long. And so in my marital context with crisis work or in family system stuff, I see oldest more able to just say, you know what, it's not going to work. This isn't the right one for me. As much as
Mm.
I love her or love him, I think I'm going to move on. Where I see middles and only sometimes to a fault, hold on and try to create something that's not likely there, or heal something that the other person doesn't want to heal, right? It can become quite tricky. Birth order matters because, like in your instance, your case, with two brothers above you, and you talked earlier in the show about how your lens went up through both of us and mom and dad. When you were breaking up with Kelly, we'll just keep Kelly in the focus. You ran the whole thing by me. You and I talked about it a ton, and mom and dad. Maybe Warren knew a little bit. Did I talk to you about breaking up with any of my girlfriends?
No.
Wasn't even a consideration. So we tie that into a family dynamic. And thankfully, we don't have a scenario like this at the moment in our immediate Anderson family. So that's great. But if something was going on, we'll just pick my sons. If Jacob was really struggling about something and being rude and mean and not being kind to you and mom and others, you wouldn't write it off. You wouldn't just say, well, forget Jacob, then he'll figure it out. And right, as a relational person, you'd hold on and you'd pray and you'd talk and you'd call and you stay on. I think some oldest at a time might say, you know what, he'll come back later. If he comes back, I'm gonna I'll pray for him. I might check in once in a while, but I'm not going to work at it. I'm not going to be as intentional about it. I just see it in counseling settings. I can see you
It's
thinking
interesting.
through it. I see it through.
I am. The wheels are turning.
Let's say all of a sudden I developed a cocaine addiction. Would you just let me ride off into the sunset, or would you do something about it?
Oh, no, but I'd have to be careful because I know a lot about enabling and addictions and codependency. So I have to be careful that I wasn't trying to help you more than you were helping yourself.
Yeah, I understand, but you wouldn't even. There'd be no context where you go, well, Elliot's almost 60. He'll figure it out. He's either going to die of cocaine or get help, or
No.
right. You'd be
You think
all in
Warren
still.
would write you off though? That's I don't know. I'm challenging your assertion.
Not write me off. I think it's different, and part of that's based on his introversion and his more laid back personality. No, but he did great reeling me in when I was rebelling and breaking rules and laws and everything. He was keeping me accountable as he could. He knew I was predetermined. So I don't want you to think too specific about us at the moment, rather about the context of greater family systemics or other people or other relationships.
So you would say for your couples in crisis that the oldest, if
One
that's
who's
if,
most loyal to the marriage, even if the marriage is failing, is usually not the one. It's the least resistance thing again. It's the one who's
yeah,
got the most power, and it tends to be the older. What Ted Shea call it again? The
the
something of
law
the
of least
least
interest.
loss
That
of
was
least interest, right? That's
law
always
of least
there.
interest.
Yeah.
The person who is least interested in maintaining the relationship has the most power.
Right. And often that makes the other one dance in
Yeah,
powerful ways to try to bring them back. And I see
towards
that in
avoidance
siblings
stuff.
as much as
Hmm.
I do in marriage. When I'm working with clients who have difficult sibling stuff going on, and sometimes I'm glad they're loyal. I'm glad they love the person. I'm glad they're wanting things right, but sometimes to a fault,
Yeah,
focusing so much on them rather than themselves, that gets themselves off the rails or off the path of wellness. That's what I'm saying. I don't think oldest or onlys would do that as much.
and that's possible. I mean, from a personal perspective, I mean, I never had one clean breakup in my whole life. I was always like, okay, we're gonna get. And I remember as a child being like, why do people get on again, off again? They should just break up and move on. That was never me, as you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
I was always like, but we've put so much into this. We can. What's the sunk cost fallacy? Or there's one of those
Yeah.
where you think we've put so much into this, so much effort, so it has to work out.
Yeah. And it's hard to kind of wash that away.
I never saw that as a youngest child trait per se, and I'm not saying it's not. I just thought that was more of me, like, always like, "We can
I
still
would
make
just
this
say it's a
work."
factor. That's all. Just a factor. Again, I have not looked recently at research on these things, but when I did before in presentations or teachings, middle children in marriage tend to be the most adaptable and flexible.
Right.
Onlys tend to be the most loyal and the most committed to a fault at times when they're being abused or oppressed, and they just hang on and hang in, right? And where the oldest will tend to have, like you said, when they're matched with the right kind of younger sibling in the dynamic, have the most secure relationships. But I almost guarantee you 95% of the time, that's because that oldest person is really in charge
Mhm.
in a way that fits for both. And that's great, right? It doesn't matter what that looks like to others, it's what works for their marriage. And so those things matter. That's why I'm kind of throwing those all in together. I like to talk about it as a factor or a
Yeah.
contributor rather than like, oh, it's got to be that.
Right. There's research that birth order isn't is Like, the traits aren't as universal as we might think,
I think they are. Yeah.
but I don't know that I that research, I think that there's been a lack of research ultimately, that we still focus on the parents so much in developmental psych research, which is, of course, appropriate. But I think to dismiss the siblings is really stupid. It's for all the reasons we started this conversation with, that if you are a younger sibling, you are looking to that older sibling for the most part, unless you just really reject. Like, your older sibling is, again, an atypical firstborn and just kinda a rebel and just takes off, but, I mean, and if not, I do think that you are looking to that sibling and giving them a lot of weight in how they impact you, and you can't
Good
really
and bad.
explicate that. Yeah,
No.
good and
Yeah.
bad. Yeah, so
And it doesn't necessarily determine your identity, but I definitely think it influences.
well, yeah, and I tell Dan all the time, like, "Tell Elliot and Warren, like, you're
Thank you.
welcome or
Yeah.
thank you all the time because I love sports, and there's all these things that and that I don't when Dan's like, "No, this is what we need to do," and he makes the final call, I'm like, "Yeah, you can thank my
Okay.
brothers because 'cause I'm used
All
to
right.
having men who are older than me tell me what to do."
Yeah. Like, all
And
right, I guess that's what we're doing.
yeah, and it works from a biblical
Again, it works
perspective
for you
on
guys too, systemically for
mhm,
him and you.
mhm. So I
And yet,
tell him.
even though he has that strong leadership of your marriage, he definitely allows you to be you and gives you plenty of room and plenty of say and plenty of decision processing. Right. So again,
Yeah,
that's how the adaptability of his middle status with his firstborn traits is a really good mix for you.
right, and I still wanna get on with Angie sometime and talk about how can you be quote unquote submissive wife and still have your independence and still not water down your beliefs or opinions. I mean, Dan wrote me a song. I'd written all these songs for him. He wrote me a song called My Courageous Loving Wife. And it was kind of about how he was so proud of me for sticking to my values and convictions throughout COVID. And that was hard because I mean that alienated us.
Absolutely.
My fervor alienated us from a lot of friends, and I won't say alienated, but yeah, it caught you everyone lived through it. It caused
Cause
some
some division.
dissension.
Yeah, for
It
sure.
did, and
Yeah.
with family too.
Hmm.
It did. There were some very tense moments, and he still saw me with the eyes of, "She's not coming at this from a combative standpoint. She's coming from a very deeply felt conviction, and she was raised to stand by those principles, and I admire that in her." Even though he could have easily gone, "Okay, Karen's going so hard with this dissident thing with COVID
Little
and
much, a
her."
little much. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
she's a lot.
Yeah.
That only makes me want to lean into his leadership and authority more because I
Absolutely.
can trust that I'm held safely and I'm regarded with admiration for those very things that can be the kind of qualities you're like, well, these could turn people off. Like these could, some people could look at these and be like, I don't like that about Karen. I like the sweet, whatever Karen, the sweet kind. But when she goes, no, I believe this and it's going to impact how we move through this time
Yeah.
as a
Well,
couple.
some of the marriage books I've read, Cloud and Townsend in particular, talk about your ability as a partner to 1000% accept them exactly as they are brings the kind of freedom that then becomes adaptable and flexible because you just know you're loved fully for who you are, even if it's super passionate in that area. Interesting thing from Angie's perspective, we could get her on sometime. I've had two couples request time with her this summer
Yeah.
because of they want to know how have you first of all lived with Elliot this long? What is it like to be with an ADHD partner, just a super creative, driven, hyper, nonstop? Like I was up at 4:10 this morning and immediately on the move, right? Doing dishes and doing workout. I fixed the kitchen table already. I fixed some chairs already. I've stained all my deck already, right? I'm on this podcast now. I'm going to do a garden night. Right? Blah, 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 just keeps going, going,
Yeah.
going. And in a good way, they are wanting to know how have you done that? Because obviously mom provided the structure for dad and Angie provides structure for me.
Right.
But I am pretty structured and I am
Hmm.
fairly organized. So it's not like I'm
Yeah.
out of bounds in that area, but that balance. And again, her scenario, if we're talking birth order, is an only. Her brother was born when she's 16. To me, that's primarily an only. She gives only vibe more than oldest vibe, but it's a super only. But that context, and who does she identify the most with our family system? Warren, right? And then so sometimes they'll often talk about what is up with those two? Meaning you and me. We're going off on some topic and all passionate, got the whole family stirred up, and they're sitting in the corner, just talking about
Right.
realities and structure. And both of them are very social. So we're not saying Warren and Angie, just because they're introverted, aren't social. They are social. They have some ambiversion in them. But it would be good to get her perspective on there about those things. And I think when I've heard her talk to other couples about how she's handled a very flamboyant, hyper, multifaceted kind of husband, it's been really good counsel. And she's
Yeah.
talked about what do I need to get on him about and keep him accountable about, and where do I need to just let him be who he
Right.
is, because I love him for who he is and he's very effective in his areas. But at times I need that reining in,
Mm-hmm.
and so I welcome it. And she speaks directly and curtly with me way more than most couples would probably be okay with. And I rarely am hurt by it. I'm very thankful for it. Now, first couple of years of marriage, it caught me off guard. I'm like, whoa,
Right.
I wasn't used to that. I'd never seen
Right.
that. My previous girlfriends didn't do a
Right.
whole lot of that, but that's just another dynamic we can talk about. Get her on soon. All right. I'm going to do the garden at the parsonage. So let me pray for us. I'm going
Okay.
to my next task. All right, Lord, thank you for this discussion about the sibling dynamic, the sibling relationship, the birth order factors, and how those matter in our families, of course, and in our work, and in our marriage, and in our community, our church, even. And sometimes, Lord, those can be very impactful and very dramatic, sometimes just a small factor. But as we're working on growth and stability and strength and wellness, to be aware and recognize patterns and relational context that matters, and matters in our effectiveness, matters in our fulfillment, matters in our marriages. And so we're thankful for what we've been able to share today. We're thankful for our matches that we have, Karen and I both have, not only with each other as siblings, but with our spouses and in the dynamic of the entire family and our community. So we pray, Lord, this has been beneficial to somebody and maybe stirred some thoughts or insight. And we pray, Lord, that we continue to enjoy each other as brother and sister and family. And we thank you for our firstborn producer who keeps us on task. In the name of Jesus, amen.
Love and Life with Dr. Karin and Pastor Elliott is produced by Tim May and executive producer Dr. Karen Anderson-Abel. For more information about Love and Life, please go to loveandlifemedia.com.